Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. The morning in the miller's house began with the usual hum of the coffee machine. Jake stood at the kitchen counter, watching the black stream slowly fill his favorite mug, marked Best Dad. Outside the window, the suburbs of Chicago were still dozing under the soft gray light of the early morning, and the lawns of neighboring houses glistened with dew. The smell of toasted bread hung in the air. The toast was already on the plate, slightly burnt around the edges, just the way he liked it. This was his ritual, waking up before everyone else, making coffee, breathing in the silence before the house came to life with the voices of the children and Ellie's steps. He took the first sip, feeling the warmth spreading through his chest, and glanced at his watch. 7 in the morning. In half an hour, you will need to wake up Liv and Ethan, get them ready for school and kindergarten, and then go to the office. But there was something special in the air today, a feeling he couldn't quite explain yet. "Good morning, champion," Ellie's soft voice came from behind him. Jake turned around. She stood in the doorway, tying the belt of her blue robe. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her bare feet padded lightly on the wooden floor. Even without makeup, she looked fresh, with that easy smile that always made his heart beat a little faster. "Good," he smiled back, handing her a second mug. "Coffee?" "Oh, you are my savior." Ellie took the mug, inhaled the aroma, and leaned against the counter next to him. "How do you even get up so early?" "I would sleep until noon if I could." "Habit," he shrugged. "Besides, someone has to keep this house in order while you dream about your books." She laughed, jabbing him in the side with her elbow. "Hey, I'm an editor, not a writer. I don't dream about books, I correct them. And in general, today you are somehow radiant. Did something happen?" Jake took another sip before answering. He had been waiting for this moment since the evening, but wanted to present the news correctly. "Well, let's just say there was an interesting conversation in the office yesterday," he began, looking at her over the top of his mug. Ellie raised an eyebrow, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. "Interesting conversation. What is this, a promotion? Did you finally get that position?" He nodded, not holding back his smile. "Senior analyst. Officially from Monday. More responsibility, more meetings, and, yes, more money." Ellie set the mug down on the counter so abruptly that the coffee almost spilled. "Jake, seriously." Her voice soared an octave higher. "Why didn't you tell me last night?" "I wanted to make a surprise," he shrugged, enjoying her reaction. "And then, yesterday you fell asleep on the sofa with a magazine in your hands. I didn't want to wake you up." She rolled her eyes, but immediately stepped towards him and hugged him, hugging him tightly. "You're incredible, you know. I'm so proud of you." Jake hugged her back, inhaling the light scent of her shampoo. These moments, her warmth, her voice were what he worked for, what he got up for every morning. "Thank you, Elle. This means a lot to us," he said quietly. "Maybe we can finally go somewhere with the whole family. To Disneyland, for example. Liv and Ethan have been asking for a long time." She pulled away, looking at him with a sly smile. "Oh, you're the big boss now, aren't you? It's time to spoil us all." "That's right," he winked. "But first we need to celebrate. What can you say about dinner today? Not at home, but somewhere in the city. Olive Garden or something more serious." Ellie thought, tapping her finger on her chin. "Olive Garden sounds tempting. Pasta, wine. But are you sure you want to drag your children to a restaurant? Ethan spilled juice all over the table yesterday." "Then we'll order a nanny," Jake suggested. "Just you, me, and some Italian food, just like old times." We agreed, she nodded, and her smile became wider. "But I choose wine. Just not the sour one you took last time," he winced, remembering the tart taste. "It was Pinot Grigio, and it was great," she said indignantly, crossing her arms. "You just have the taste of a 5-year-old." Well, I'm sorry that I prefer the wine not to hurt my cheekbones, he laughed, raising his hands in playful surrender. Their conversation was interrupted by the patter of small feet. Ethan ran into the kitchen, his blonde hair sticking out in all directions, and his dinosaur t-shirt sporting a stain from last night's yogurt. "Dad, Mother, can I have cereal with milk?" he blurted out, jumping on the spot. "Good morning, my little Tyrannosaurus." Jake grabbed him under the arms and sat him on a chair. "Cereal, yes, but first say please." "Please." Ethan folded his hands, looking at his father with big blue eyes. "That's better." Jake took out a box of cornflakes and placed it in front of him. "Eat carefully, okay? Because yesterday you caused a flood." Ethan chuckled, scooping up some cereal with a spoon as Ellie poured him milk. "He's our artist," she said, sitting down next to her son. "It's just that his canvas is our table." "Then we need a new table," Jake grumbled, but there was no real sternness in his voice. A minute later, Liv came into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Her brown curls were disheveled and her unicorn pajamas were slightly askew. "Morning," she muttered, plopping down on the chair opposite Ethan. "Good morning, sunshine." Ellie patted her on the head. "Would you like some toast?" "With jam," Liv nodded, yawning. "And can I take my new pencils to school today?" "Of course," Jake replied, spreading jam on his toast. "But don't lose them like those blue ones last week." "It wasn't me who lost it. Maddie took them," Liv said indignantly, crossing her arms. "Maddie is your friend," Ellie clarified, placing a plate in front of her daughter. "Yes, but she's so mischievous sometimes," Liv frowned. "Yesterday I said that my drawings are strange." "Strange." Jake raised an eyebrow, sitting down at the table with a new portion of coffee. "What did you draw?" "Dinosaurs in dresses," she answered, as if it were obvious. Ellie laughed, almost spilling her coffee. "Well, this is definitely unusual. Maybe Maddie just didn't understand your brilliant vision." "That's it." Liv nodded, taking a bite of toast. "That's what I told her." "Well done, stand up for yourself," Jake winked. "You are our future artist." Breakfast continued in the same vein, with Ethan talking about dinosaurs he saw in his dreams, Liv complaining about school rules, and Ellie and Jake exchanging jokes. It was their usual rhythm, noisy, warm, a little chaotic. But there was something else in that comfort today, the promise of change that Jake had felt from the moment he opened his eyes. When the children ran off to get ready, he looked at Ellie, who was finishing her coffee, looking thoughtfully out the window. "Are you okay?" he asked, noticing a slight shadow on her face. She blinked as if coming out of her thoughts and smiled. "Yes, it's just. You're a big boss now, and I'm here with these two brats. Maybe it's time for me to change something too. For example," he leaned towards her, interested. "I don't know," she shrugged. "Maybe go back to work. Not part-time, but for real. Just like before." Jake nodded, considering her words. "If you want, I'm all for it. You loved your editing. Or something new." "We'll see." Ellie stood up, putting the mug in the sink. "But first, let's celebrate your promotion. Nanny, pasta, wine, I'm already looking forward to it." "Then see you in the evening." He stood up, kissing her on the cheek. "And don't forget about the wine. Something sweet for me." "Only for your sake," she grinned, following him with her gaze as he took his briefcase and headed for the door. Jake stepped out onto the porch, breathing in the cool morning air. I was waiting at the entrance. The radio was already playing something from classic rock. He got behind the wheel, glancing at the house, their house, where the kitchen windows were glowing, and behind them was his family. The promotion opened a new chapter, and he felt on the rise. It was his day, their day. Whatever lay ahead, he was confident that they would cope together. Saturday afternoon was in full swing at the Miller house. Jake sat in the backyard, leaning against the back of a lawn chair, watching the sun's rays filter through the leaves of the old maple tree. A light breeze rustled the grass, and from the open window came the ringing laughter of Liv and Ethan, who were playing in the living room. There was a bottle of cold lemonade on the table in front of him. After yesterday's dinner at the Olive Garden, he felt pleasantly tired. The evening was a success, and the promotion was still buzzing in his head like a quiet, joyful melody. The door to the veranda creaked, and Ellie appeared on the threshold. She held the laptop in her hands, clutching it to her chest like a schoolgirl with a textbook. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a high ponytail, and her jeans and white t-shirt made her look like the Ellie he had met 10 years ago. She looked animated, almost excited. "There you are," she said, slapping her bare feet on the wooden boards of the veranda. "I searched for you." "I'm relaxing here." Jake nodded towards the lemonade. "Want?" "Fresh from the refrigerator." "Oh, yes." Ellie put the laptop on the table and plopped down in the chair opposite him. "But first, look at this." She opened the laptop, the screen lit up, and Jake leaned closer, squinting into the sun. "What's there?" he asked, taking a sip of lemonade. The cold sourness hit my throat pleasantly. "I sent my resume." Ellie turned the screen towards him. "And look, they've already answered." Jake put the bottle on the table, wiping his hands on his jeans. Seriously? He looked at the screen, where a letter with the bright and stone logo was open. "Is this the company you talked about yesterday?" "Yes." Her voice rang with delight. "Law office in the center. They invited me for an interview on Monday. Can you imagine?" "They're fast," Jake whistled, skimming the text with his eyes. "We invite you to an interview for the position of secretary. Attention to detail. Office experience is welcome." "Sounds solid." "Is it true?" Ellie leaned towards him, her eyes sparkling. "I didn't sleep half the night. I thought I sent it in vain." And then bam, and the answer. "Did you not sleep because of this?" He grinned, leaning back. You just decided to try it yesterday." "Well, she shrugged, tapping her finger on the edge of the laptop. "Your promotion inspired me. You're a senior analyst now, and am I just a mom with pancakes?" "Hey, you're not just a mom." Jake shook his head. "You are the best mom. And the editor, by the way." "Former editor," she corrected, poking him in the shoulder. "In recent years, I have only worked part-time and stayed at home. And here, this is an opportunity, Jake. Something new." He nodded, looking at her inspired face. Ellie has always been like this. When she caught fire with an idea, she was unstoppable. "And what did you write to them in your resume?" he asked, taking the lemonade and handing her the bottle. "Thank you." She took a sip, wrinkling her nose from the acid. "I wrote about editing, how I organize projects, and worked with authors." "Well," she added, "that I'm responsible and all that. It's true, right?" "Absolutely true." Jake smiled. "You are our queen of order. Remember when you organized that picnic for Liv's school? Even the rain didn't stop us." "Oh, yes," Ellie laughed, throwing her head back. "Everyone was running under the tent, and I was handing out sandwiches like a general." "Maybe you should mention this at the interview." "Why not?" he shrugged. "Tell me you can command an army of sandwiches. They will be delighted." "Very funny," she rolled her eyes, but the smile did not leave her face. "No, seriously, what do you think? Is it worth going?" Jake thought, looking at the maple tree, whose leaves were shaking slightly in the wind. "It's worth it," he said finally. "If that's what you want, I'm all for it." "You said it yourself, we are a team." "Team," Ellie nodded, her voice becoming softer. "Then will you help me get ready? I haven't been to an interview in ages." "Of course," he winked. "What is needed there?" "Questions to practice." "Yes." She opened the tab with a job description. "Here, look. Maintaining order in documentation, coordinating meetings, communicating with clients." "I have to show that I can handle it." "Easy." Jake leaned towards the screen. "Tell me that you have been managing the chaos of 2 children for years." "This is cooler than any documentation." Ellie thought, tapping her finger on her chin. "Maybe it's true." "Successfully coordinated morning school collections and prevented lost socks crises." "Here," Jake laughed, "and add that you know how to negotiate with Ethan about dinosaurs. It's like with clients, only more complicated." "Oh, right," she giggled. "Yesterday, he demanded another toy. He says Tom from kindergarten has more." "Tom always has more." Jake shook his head. "This guy is my wallet's nightmare." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud scream from the house. Liv leaned out the window, her curls fluttering in the wind. "Mom, Dad, Ethan broke my block castle." Her voice was full of indignation. "I didn't break it." Ethan's cry of protest was immediately heard. He fell himself. Ellie sighed, closing her laptop. "Do you see?" she said, looking at Jake. "This is my experience working with clients." "Then you're definitely ready," he grinned, standing up. "Let's go figure it out." They entered the house, where Liv stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, and multicolored cubes lay nearby. Ethan sat on the couch, clutching a plastic dinosaur, looking guilty. "He pushed my lock." Liv pointed a finger at her brother. "I built it in half an hour." "I didn't want to." Ethan frowned. "The dinosaur just wanted to see what was inside." "Dinosaurs don't look at castles," Liv retorted, stomping her foot. "They're looking." Ethan stubbornly crossed his arms. "Okay," Ellie raised her hands like a peacemaker. "Let's go without war." "Ethan, say sorry." "Sorry," he muttered, without looking at his sister. "And you, Liv," Ellie turned to her daughter. "Forgive him. They're just cubes." "Okay," Liv sighed, but still frowned. "But he must help me build a new one." "Agreed," Jake nodded, picking up a few cubes from the floor. "Ethan, take your dinosaur and line up with your sister. In the meantime, I'll get some lemonade." "Hooray!" Ethan jumped off the couch, forgetting about the argument. Ellie looked at Jake with a grateful smile. "You always know how to calm them down," she said as the children began to add blocks. "This is talent," he winked, heading towards the kitchen. "But you're doing a good job, too." Returning with 2 glasses of lemonade, he found Ellie at her laptop. She was flipping through something again, frowning. "What now?" he asked, putting the glasses on the table. "Clothes." Ellie looked up. "If they take me, I need something decent. I only have jeans and t-shirts. And the blouse you wore yesterday." He sat down next to her, looking at the screen where she opened the store's website. "This is for dinner," she waved it off. "There you need a business style. Lawyers, you know. Maybe buy a couple of skirts and shoes." "Skirts are good," Jake nodded. "But shoes, you hate heels." "You'll have to fall in love," she sighed. "This is a chance, Jake. I want to look professional." "You're already a professional." He put his hand on her shoulder. "But if you want a skirt, take it. I'll pay." "Oh, what a generous boss," Ellie grinned, jabbing him with her elbow. "Thank you, but I can handle it myself if they take me." "Sure." He raised an eyebrow. "Absolutely," she nodded, her voice becoming firmer. "This is my step. How your promotion is yours." Jake looked at her, feeling a mixture of pride and slight surprise. Ellie had always been energetic, but now some new fire was burning in her. "Then good luck on Monday," he said, raising his glass. "For our team." For the team, she clinked lemonade with him, and her smile lit up the veranda. Tuesday evening fell over the Chicago suburbs like a soft blanket of warm streetlights and the distant hum of cars. Jake sat in the living room, leaning back on the couch, laptop on his lap. The screen lit up with tables and graphs reports that needed to be completed by tomorrow morning. The room smelled of freshly brewed coffee, although the cup on the table was already cold. Outside the window, the wind moved the maple branches, casting long shadows on the floor, and from the kitchen came the quiet clink of dishes the nanny was cleaning up after dinner. The door slammed, and a whirlwind of children's voices flew into the house. Liv and Ethan burst into the living room, their jackets unbuttoned and their cheeks flushed from the cool air. "Dad." Liv threw her backpack on the floor and ran to the sofa. "We had a quiz at school today, and I won a sticker." "Is it true?" Jake put down his laptop, smiling at his daughter. "Which one?" "With a unicorn." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a shiny sticker, proudly showing it off. "I answered all the questions about animals." "Well done, Liv." He patted her curly head. "You're smart." "And I drew a dinosaur." Ethan climbed onto the sofa next to him, almost knocking over his laptop. In his hands, he held a crumpled sheet of paper with crooked green triceratops. "Look, Dad." "Wow." Jake took the drawing, looking at it with feigned seriousness. What is this? A new species? Miller's Triceratops. Yes, Ethan nodded, jumping up and down. He is the strongest. I see. Jake put the drawing on the table. You are right on top today. Where's Mom? She's still in the car, Liv shrugged, taking off her jacket. He's talking on the phone. Again, Jake raised an eyebrow, glancing towards the door. Yes, Ethan plopped down on the sofa, swinging his legs. She does this all the time when she picks us up. Jake nodded, trying not to show a hint of worry. Ellie started working at Bright and Stone a week ago, and her new rhythm was already felt in the house. She left earlier, returned later, and the phone became her constant companion. But he brushed aside the thought it's work, nothing surprising. The door creaked again, and Ellie entered the living room. Her blonde hair was slightly disheveled, and she was holding a bag in her hands and a phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing a dark blue skirt and white blouse, a new business style that she was adopting with enthusiasm. Yes, I will send you the documents tomorrow morning, she said, closing the door with her foot. No, everything is ready. We just need to check. Okay, see you tomorrow. She ended the call, tossed the phone into her bag, and exhaled, finally noticing her family. Hello, my stars, Ellie smiled, but there was fatigue in her voice. How are you? Liv won a sticker, and I drew a dinosaur. Ethan jumped up, handing her the drawing. Oh, what a handsome man. Ellie took the sheet, looking at it. Are these horns glowing? No, it's just a yellow pencil, Ethan chuckled. But it would be cool. Very cool, she nodded, putting the drawing on the table. And you, Liv? I had a quiz. Liv showed the sticker again. I defeated everyone. My good girl, Ellie kissed her on the forehead, throwing her bag onto the chair. You are heroes today. How are you? Jake closed the laptop, looking at her. Are you late again? Yes, Ellie sighed, falling onto the sofa next to him. We have a new client, and everyone is running around like crazy. I had to stay to sort out the papers. Hard day. He handed her his cup of cooled coffee. Thank you. She took the cup, took a sip, and winced. Cold. Yes, the day was. Eventful, but interesting. I've almost gotten used to it. That's good, Jake nodded. What kind of client? Some businessman, Ellie waved her hand. A lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings. I spent 3 hours sorting his contracts today, but now I know what force majeure is in legal language. Wow, he chuckled. Soon you will be a lawyer. Nope, she shook her head. I just keep everything in order. But it's cool to feel useful. You're always useful, Jake put his hand on her shoulder. By the way, the children are bored. Ethan asked why you don't read to him before bed. Is it true? Ellie turned to her son, who was already rummaging through the toy box. Ethan, did you miss you? A little, he shrugged, not looking away from the dinosaur. But Dad read me about the tea. Rex, so it's okay. Well, thanks, Dad, Ellie smiled at Jake. You are my savior. I'm trying, he shrugged, but the nanny also helped out today. Dinner was ready when I arrived. Nanny? Ellie frowned. Did you call her again? Yes, Jake nodded. I was late with the report. You were at work. Someone had to take the children. Ellie pursed her lips, looking at him. I thought you could handle it. I did it, he raised an eyebrow. But I can't be in 2 places at the same time. I now have meetings until 6. Okay, she sighed, putting the cup down. It's just, I don't want nannying to become the norm. This is our job. I agree, Jake nodded. But while we both get used to the new schedule, she helps. This is temporary. Okay, Ellie rubbed her temples. Her voice became quieter. I'm just tired. These lawyers. They don't seem to know what the end of the working day is. Welcome to my world, Jake grinned. Would you like me to order pizza? You can rest. Oh yes, her eyes lit up. Pizza is what I need. With pepperoni? And with cheese, Ethan added, running up to the sofa. Can I, Dad? You can. Jake took out his phone. Liv, are you in favor? Yes. Liv raised her head from the cubes she was collecting on the floor. But without olives, they are disgusting. No olives, Ellie nodded, looking at Jake. You know how to bribe us. This is my talent, he smiled, dialing the number of the pizzeria. Domino's, 2 large ones, pepperoni and cheese. Delivery in half an hour. Hooray. Ethan jumped, almost knocking the cup off the table. Careful, Ellie caught the cup at the last moment. You are like a tornado to us. Tornado with dinosaurs, Liv giggled, stacking the cubes into a tower. While Jake ordered pizza, Ellie stood up, stretched, and walked to the window, looking out onto the street. Her silhouette in the light of the lanterns seemed a little tense. Are you okay? He asked after ending the call. Yes, she turned around, smiling. I'm just getting used to it. Work, children, you. Everything somehow started spinning quickly. This is our new rhythm. Jake approached her, standing next to her. We can handle it. We'll manage, she nodded, but her gaze lingered on the phone, which vibrated again in her bag. Oh, again. Job? He narrowed his eyes. Yes, Ellie sighed, taking the phone. Just a second, I'll just answer. She walked away to the kitchen. Her voice became quieter. Yes, I'm home. No, tomorrow morning. Okay? Jake watched her leave, feeling a slight pang in his chest. It was her first month at her new job, and he knew she was trying. But something about her detachment, the phone, the fatigue, the short answers made him think. Dad, can I turn on cartoons? Liv ran up to him, distracting him from his thoughts. Yes, honey, he nodded, returning to the sofa. Choose what you want. Dinosaurs, Ethan shouted, jumping onto the couch. Then dinosaurs, Jake turned on the TV, and the room was filled with the sounds of a cartoon. Ellie returned a minute later, throwing the phone on the table. All? He asked, looking at her. That's it, she nodded, sitting down next to him. We were just clarifying about tomorrow. It's okay. Okay, Jake smiled, although there was a slight aftertaste inside. Pizza will be coming soon. Rest. I'm resting. She leaned against him, closing her eyes. You're the best. He hugged her with one arm, looking at the children who were already enthusiastically watching the cartoon. A new rhythm was entering their lives, his promotion, her job, a nanny, pizza instead of dinner. The middle of the day in Jake's office felt like a quiet storm. Outside the window of Chicago, the business center was noisy. Car horns, footsteps of passers-by, the distant howl of a siren. Inside, everything was muffled, the clatter of keys, the rustling of papers, the occasional ringing of telephones. Jake sat at his new desk in the corner of the open space, surrounded by glass walls and a view of skyscrapers. Promotion to senior analyst gave him not only more work, but also a little space. Now his desk was a little further away from the general noise, and there was even a small violet on the windowsill that he had brought from home. He rubbed his neck, leaning back in his chair. Numbers were glowing on the monitor screen, another report for the client, which had to be submitted by 5. The clock on the wall showed 3:30, and Jake decided to take a break. Standing up, he stretched, feeling his joints crack, and headed to the coffee machine in the corner of the office. The smell of coffee was already beckoning him, promising a moment of peace. Miller, you're kind of thoughtful today, came the voice of a colleague, Tom, who was standing at the machine with a plastic cup in his hand. His red hair stuck out as always, and his tie was tied slightly crooked. I'm just tired, Jake shrugged, inserting a coin into the machine. The new schedule squeezes out all the juice. Welcome to the big boys club, Tom grinned, taking a sip of his coffee. Promotion is not only money, but also a headache. How are they coping at home? Okay, Jake pressed the espresso button and the machine hummed. Ellie started working too, so we're both in business now. Oh, double strike, Tom whistled. Where is she? At a law firm, as a secretary, Jake answered, picking up his glass. The hot plastic burned my fingers. Bright and stone in the center. Seriously? Tom raised an eyebrow. This is a cool office. My sister interned there. He says the lawyers there are like sharks. Well, Ellie's holding on for now. Jake smiled, taking a sip. The coffee was bitter but invigorating. She likes it. I'm glad for you. Tom patted him on the shoulder. But take care of her. Such places can suck. Suck it. Jake frowned, looking at his colleague. Well, Tom shrugged. Long hours, important clients, corporate events. People change. She can handle it. Jake waved it off, but Tom's words left a slight aftertaste. He returned to the table, put the coffee next to the keyboard, and again buried his nose in the report. But my thoughts were already wandering somewhere else. Ellie has really changed in recent weeks. Her enthusiasm was contagious, but with it came something else, a detachment. She stayed late more often, talked on the phone more often, and even seemed far away at home. Jake chalked it up to his new job, but after talking with Tom, questions started popping up in his head. The clock struck 3, and he decided to call home. The children should have already returned with a nanny. He dialed the number, listening to the long beeps until Liv answered, her voice ringing through the speaker. "Dad," she screamed, almost deafening him. "Where are you?" "In the office, honey," Jake smiled, leaning back in his chair. "And you?" "At home, with Ethan and the nanny," Liv started babbling. "We did crafts today, and I made a unicorn out of paper." "Cool," he nodded, imagining her delighted face. "What about Ethan?" "He broke his dinosaur," Liv giggled. "He said that he fell from the mountain." "This is not a mountain, this is a table." Ethan's indignant voice came from the background. "It still broke." Liv laughed. "Dad, will you come soon?" "About 7. Jake looked at his watch. "Where is Mom?" "She's not home yet," Liv hesitated. "She said she would be late." Again, he tried to keep his voice even, but something skipped a beat inside. "Yes," Liv sighed. "She came late yesterday, too. She said that she had a lot of papers." "I see," Jake nodded, although Liv didn't see it. "Tell her to call when she gets home, okay?" "Okay," Liv chuckled. "Can Ethan and I watch cartoons?" "You can," he smiled. "But not for long, okay? And eat dinner." "Hooray!" Liv shouted something to Ethan, and the connection was cut off. Jake put the phone on the table, looking at the screen with numbers. Delayed. Again. He remembered how yesterday Ellie returned after 8, threw her bag on the chair, and collapsed on the sofa with a tired smile. "The client is important," she said then. He didn't ask for details, but now that word, lingering, sounded like an echo in his head. He finished his coffee, crumpled the cup, and threw it in the trash. It was necessary to work, but thoughts stubbornly returned to Ellie. He liked her new-style skirts, blouses, low-heeled shoes. She looked confident, alive. But with that came other details. The phone she put away when he entered the room, short, "Everything's fine," instead of stories about the day. And the smell is light, floral, not the same as her old perfume. Jake shook his head, clearing the thoughts. This is nonsense. She's just busy. He himself was late twice this week, meetings, reports, a new rhythm. But still something bothered me. By 5:30, he finished his report and decided to leave early. I collected my things, said goodbye to Tom, who was still fiddling with papers, and went down to the car. The road home took half an hour, traffic jams, a radio with some pop song, thoughts that were spinning like a broken record. When he entered the house, the nanny, a young girl named Kate, was collecting her things in the hallway. "Hey, Kate," Jake threw the keys on the shelf. "How are you?" "Hello, Mr. Miller," she smiled, throwing her backpack over her shoulder. "Everything is fine. The children have eaten and are now watching cartoons. Mrs. Miller hasn't returned yet." "Thank you," he nodded. "See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." Kate waved her hand and left. Jake walked into the living room. Liv and Ethan were sitting on the couch, their eyes on the TV, where dinosaurs were roaring in a cartoon. There was an empty pizza box on the table, leftovers from dinner. "Hey, gang," he plopped down next to him, taking off his jacket. "Dad," Ethan jumped up, hugging him. "You're back. Earlier," Jake corrected him. "Where is your mother?" "She called." Liv did not look up from the screen. "She said it would be late." "Late?" He frowned. "At what time?" "I don't know," Liv shrugged. "She said she had a meeting." "Okay. Have you eaten?" "Yes, pizza." Ethan pointed to the box. "With cheese." "Okay." Jake nodded, standing up. I'm in the shower, and you watch, but not for long. He went upstairs, threw his bag in the bedroom, and turned on the water in the bathroom. While steam filled the room, he undressed and stood under the hot streams, trying to wash away his fatigue. But the thoughts did not go away. Meeting, late, telephone, perfume. After his shower, he came downstairs wearing an old t-shirt and shorts. The children had already turned off the TV and were playing with blocks on the floor. Jake sat on the sofa, looking at them, but his gaze fell on Ellie's bag, which she left in the morning. She always took her with her, but today, apparently, she went with someone else. He hesitated, but curiosity won out. Opening the bag, he immediately smelled an unfamiliar smell. Jake frowned as he looked deeper and came across a small bottle of perfume. Flora, the label read, new. He had never seen anything like this on her. Dad, what are you doing? Liv raised her head from the cubes. It's just. He quickly put the bottle back, closing the bag. Everything is fine. Friday evening at the Miller's house began with a bustle that was more reminiscent of a theater rehearsal. Jake stood in front of the bedroom mirror, tying his tie the dark blue one Ellie had given him for his last birthday. It was already getting dark outside. The sky over the suburbs of Chicago was painted deep indigo, and the street lights were lit with a soft yellow light. From the bathroom came the sound of a hairdryer, punctuated by the slight clinking of bracelets as Ellie was getting ready for the bright and stone office party she had insisted he go to with her. Jake, are you ready? She shouted from the bathroom, shouting over the hairdryer. We should be there in half an hour. Almost, he straightened the knot of his tie, looking at his reflection. Black jacket, white shirt, neatly combed hair, he looked like a man who knew what he was doing. But inside, I felt a slight discomfort. Parties were not his thing, especially other people's corporate parties. Ellie turned off the hair dryer and walked out, holding her dress with one hand. It was dark green, off the shoulder, flowing to the knees, elegant without being flashy. Her blonde hair lay in soft waves, and her lips were wearing new lipstick, a little brighter than usual. Well, how? She spun in front of him, smiling. Will it go? Jake froze, looking at her. She looked amazing, confident, lively, not at all the tired Ellie who had been returning from work the last few weeks. Will it go? He grinned, stepping closer. You look like a star. They'll all be jealous. Oh, thank you, she winked, adjusting her earrings. But you're okay, too. This tie is my top choice. I admit you have taste, he smiled, taking her hand. Children with a nanny? Yes, Kate is already here. Ellie nodded towards the living room, where the voices of Liv and Ethan could be heard. I told her to put them to bed by 9. We won't stay late. Okay? Jake nodded, although the thought flashed through his head. I hope so. Then let's go. Let's go. She grabbed her purse from the dresser, and they went downstairs. In the living room, Liv was building a tower out of blocks, and Ethan was chasing a plastic dinosaur across the carpet. Kate, the nanny, was sitting on the sofa with a book in her hands, her head raised when they entered. Hi, guys. Ellie sat down next to the children. We're leaving for a while. Listen to Kate, okay? Okay, Mom. Liv didn't look up from the cubes. You are beautiful. Thank you, honey. Ellie kissed her on the cheek. And you, Ethan? You're like a princess. Ethan ran up, hugging her legs. Is Dad like a king? Exactly. Jake laughed, picking up his son in his arms. The king and princess are going to the ball. Be good, okay? Agreed, Ethan nodded, returning to the dinosaur. Good luck to you, Kate waved her book. I control everything. Thank you, Kate, Ellie smiled, and she and Jake went out to the car. The journey to the center took 20 minutes. The radio was playing some jazz, and Ellie was chatting about work, about clients, about how she learned to parse legal terms. Jake listened, nodding, but his mind wandered. In recent days, he had noticed her detachment, the phone, the perfume, the delays. But today, she seemed the same as Ellie, and he decided to cast aside his doubts. Bright and Stone rented a room in a trendy restaurant in the city center. When they entered, Jake immediately felt the atmosphere. The dim light of the chandeliers, the clink of glasses, laughter, and the hum of voices. The tables were covered with white tablecloths, tall potted plants stood along the walls, and a live quartet was playing in the corner saxophone, piano, double bass. People in suits and dresses moved between the tables, holding wine or cocktails. Wow, Jake looked around, straightening his jacket. Seriously. Is it true? Ellie took his arm, beaming. I told you, everything is grown up with us. Let's go, I'll introduce you to my colleagues. She led him to a group of people near the bar. A tall man in a gray suit with light gray hair turned to them. His smile was wide, but slightly strained. Ellie, you came after all, he said, extending his hand to Jake. Is this your husband? Yes, this is Jake. Ellie nodded. Jake, this is Ryan Crawford, senior associate. Nice to meet you. Jake shook his hand. Ryan's hand was warm, his grip tight. Ellie told me a lot about you. I hope only good things, Ryan grinned. His gaze slid to Ellie. She is our star. Organized the entire archive in a week. That's her talent, Jake smiled, but noticed Ellie blushing slightly. Oh, she's being modest, Ryan winked at her, taking a glass from the bar. What will you drink? Wine, whiskey. Wine, Ellie nodded. Red, if available. Same for me, Jake added, watching Ryan motion to the bartender. While they were waiting for their drinks, a woman in a black dress approached them, her dark hair styled in a neat bun. Ellie, you're beautiful, she said, hugging her. Is this your husband? Yes, Jake, Ellie introduced him. This is Linda, my boss. I believe, Jake nodded, accepting the glass from Ryan. She always keeps everything under control. That's for sure, Linda smiled. Well, have fun. I'll go say hello to my partners. She left and Jake took a sip of wine. It was tart, with a slight berry aftertaste. Ellie stood nearby, chatting with Ryan about some business, and he noticed how easily they communicated laughter, quick glances, small gestures. It was natural, but something about it pricked him. How are you getting in? Ryan turned to him, interrupting his thoughts. I'm trying, Jake shrugged. I'm more into numbers than parties. I understand, Ryan nodded. But you're lucky with Ellie by your side. She saves us all. This is her superpower, Jake smiled, looking at his wife. She laughed at something Ryan said, and her hand lightly touched his sleeve. Jake took another sip of wine, trying not to pay attention. These are just colleagues. Job. But Ryan's gaze direct, a little longer than usual lingered on Ellie, and Jake felt a chill. He shrugged it off, turning his attention to the conversation. How long have you been with the company? He asked Ryan. 5 years, he answered, twirling the glass in his hand. I started with little things, now I'm doing big things. And you? Ellie said you're in finance? Yes, senior analyst, Jake nodded. Recently promoted. Congratulations, Ryan raised his glass. For success. Thank you, Jake clinked his glass with him, but his gaze fell again on Ellie. She went to the bar for another glass, and Ryan followed her, saying something quietly. They were close, not too close, but close enough for Jake to notice. He finished his wine, put the glass on the table, and approached them. Ellie turned around, her eyes sparkling from the light of the chandeliers. Everything is fine? He asked, placing his hand on her waist. Yes, she nodded, smiling. We're just chatting. Ryan was talking about a new client. Complicated guy, Ryan added, looking at Jake. But Ellie tamed him. She can, Jake nodded, but his smile was a little forced. He noticed how Ellie straightened her hair, how her gaze flashed to Ryan quickly, almost imperceptibly. The evening continued. The music became louder, people danced and laughed. Jake met a couple more of Ellie's colleagues, drank more wine, but kept watching her out of the corner of his eye. She was in her element, smiling, joking, moving with ease. But every time she was next to Ryan, something about their interaction, the glances, the half-smiles made him feel out of place. By 10, they decided to leave. Ellie said goodbye to her colleagues, hugged Linda, and waved to Ryan. She was cheerful in the car, humming a tune from a restaurant. Did you like it? She asked, looking at him. Yes, Jake nodded, starting the engine. It was interesting to look at your world. This is not my whole world yet, she laughed. But I'm glad you went. He smiled, but a slight chill remained in his chest. Ryan. Views. A lightness that he had not seen at home. These were little things, but they clung to him like splinters. Saturday morning found Jake jogging in a park near his home. The sun had just risen above the horizon, turning the Chicago sky pink and gold. The air was fresh, with a slight smell of wet grass and distant coffee from a street cart. His sneakers tapped rhythmically on the asphalt path. His breath came out in clouds of steam, and old rock music played in his ears through his headphones, the perfect pace for running. Sweat was already on his forehead, but Jake felt alive, free from numbers, reports, and that strange aftertaste that remained after the office party a week ago. He slowed down by the wooden bench, turned off the music, and took out his headphones, listening to the sounds of the park. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, leaves rustled under the feet of the morning runners, and a flock of sparrows flew overhead. Jake wiped his face with the sleeve of his sweatshirt and sat down with his legs stretched out. A run always helped him clear his head, but today his thoughts still revolved around Ellie, her laughter at the party, her ease with Ryan, the new scent of perfume he found in her bag. The phone in my pocket vibrated, interrupting my thoughts. He took it out, expecting to see Ellie's name, but the screen flashed an unfamiliar number. Jake frowned but answered, holding the phone to his ear. Hello? His voice was slightly hoarse from running. Hello, is this Jacob Miller? The female voice on the other end was firm, with a slight tinge of sarcasm, but unfamiliar. Yes, it's me. He straightened up, alert. Who is this? My name is Madison Crawford. She paused, as if giving him time to process. You don't know me, but I think we should talk. Crawford. Jake squinted, trying to remember. The name seemed familiar, but he couldn't make the connection. Excuse me, do I know you? Not directly, Madison chuckled, her voice becoming a little softer. I'm Ryan Crawford's wife. You met him last week at the Bright and Stone party. Jake froze, feeling his heart skip a beat. Ryan, the same lawyer with a wide smile and staring at a lie for too long. He swallowed, trying to keep his voice level. Yes, I remember, he said slowly. Nice guy, but why are you calling me? Pleasant, yes, bitterness flashed in her tone. Listen, Jake, can I call you that? I don't like beating around the bush. I have my suspicions about Ryan, and I think you can help me. Suspicions. He stood up from the bench, stepping towards the edge of the path. A breeze ran across my face, cooling my skin. What suspicions? The kind they don't talk about on the phone, Madison sighed. Are you free today? I could meet you. Somewhere neutral, for example, in a cafe. Jake fell silent, looking at the trees. His brain was working feverishly. Ryan's wife. Suspicions. Ellie. Perfume. Delays. It could have been a coincidence, but something inside him told him he didn't want to ignore this call. Why do I need this? He finally asked, gripping the phone a little tighter. I don't know you. And what do you even want from me? I understand it sounds strange, she answered calmly, but there was firmness in her voice. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. Just listen. I have something that might interest you. About your wife. About Ellie. His voice became sharper. What do you know about Ellie? Nothing specific. Yet, Madison paused. But I saw how Ryan behaved with her, and I have my own evidence. If I'm right, we both won't like it. Jake ran his hand through his hair, feeling the sweat on the back of his neck turn cold. He didn't want to believe the worst, but her words clung to the same doubts that had tormented him in recent days. Let's say I agree, he said, walking along the bench. Where and when? Brewhaven Cafe on Lincoln Avenue, she answered quickly. Say, at 11? It's not far from your area. I know this place, Jake nodded, although she didn't see it. Fine, 11. Great, relief flashed in her voice. See you there, Jake. And thanks for not hanging up. You're welcome, he smiled dryly. See you. She hung up and Jake lowered the phone, looking at the screen. He didn't know what to expect, but this call turned his morning upside down. He returned to the bench, sat down, and took a deep breath. trying to compose himself. The run was supposed to clear my head, but now it was buzzing with questions. What does this woman know? What did she see? And why did she choose him? Jake looked at his watch 9 in the morning. 2 hours until the meeting. Enough to go home, change clothes, and figure out what to say to Ellie. He stood up, put on his headphones, and ran back, but now the rhythm was faster, almost feverish. The walk home took 15 minutes through the park, past the playground where children were already screaming, and along quiet streets with neat lawns. When he entered the house, the living room was quiet. Ellie sat on the sofa with a cup of tea, leafing through a magazine, and Liv and Ethan played upstairs. Their voices and the stomping of feet could be heard. "Hello, runner?" Ellie raised her head, smiling. "How was the run?" "Okay." Jake took off his sneakers, wiping his forehead. "Fresh, but invigorating." "You're all wet." She wrinkled her nose. "Go take a shower before I make you scrub the floor." "I'm already on my way," he grinned, but his gaze lingered on her. She looked relaxed, wearing an old t-shirt and shorts with a wild ponytail. Nothing unusual, and yet, "Are you at home today?" he asked, walking towards the stairs. "Yes," Ellie nodded, turning the page. "No delays, no calls. Just us and the kids. Maybe we can go to the park." "Great idea," he nodded, trying to sound natural. "But I need to go out for a while at 11. For work." "For work?" She raised an eyebrow, looking at him. "On Saturday?" "Yes," Jake shrugged, feeling a slight pang of guilt for lying. "Just a meeting with a colleague. Nothing serious, an hour maximum." "Okay," Ellie returned to the magazine. "Just don't be late for lunch. I want to make lasagna." "I won't be late," he smiled, going upstairs. In the shower, he stood under the hot water longer than usual, letting the stream wash away the sweat and tension. But the thoughts about the call did not go away. Madison Crawford, Ryan, Ellie. He closed his eyes, imagining her at the party laughter, glances, the light touch of Ryan's hand. It could have been nothing, but it could have been anything. After changing into jeans and a gray shirt, he went downstairs. Ellie was still reading, and the children were now arguing about something in the kitchen, judging by the sounds, over the last cookie. "I'll go." Jake took the keys from the shelf. "I'll be back soon." "Good luck." Ellie waved the magazine without looking at it. "Bring coffee if you're in the mood." We agreed. He nodded and went out to the car. The journey to Brewhaven took 10 minutes. The cafe was cozy wooden tables, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, quiet music from the speakers. Jake walked in, looking around, and noticed a woman at the window. Shoulder-length dark hair, a black jacket, eyes fixed on the street. She raised her head as he approached. "Jake?" Her voice was the same as on the phone, firm, with a slight mockery. "Madison?" He nodded, sitting down opposite. "You can just Maddie," she smiled, but there was something sharp in her eyes. "Thank you for coming." "I'm still not sure why I'm here." Jake folded his hands on the table. "So what did you want to say?" She took a sip of coffee, looking at him over the top of her cup. "Let's start simple," she said. "Have you noticed anything strange in your wife's behavior?" Jake tensed, but tried not to show it. "Strange?" He shrugged. "She is busy with work. This is all." "Busy," Maddie nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "So is Ryan. Very busy, especially with her." His heart skipped a beat again, but he remained silent, waiting for the continuation. Maddie leaned back in her chair, her gaze becoming more serious. "I'm not crazy, Jake," she said quietly, "and I don't want to ruin your life. But I have reason to think that something is going on between them, and I want to know the truth. Are you with me?" Jake looked at her, feeling the world around him slowly begin to crumble. "Before I begin," she said, lowering her voice, "tell me, did you really not notice anything? Is there anything strange about your wife?" Jake frowned, feeling something tighten inside him. He didn't want to delve into it, but her question demanded an answer. "She's busy," he said slowly, looking at his hands. "Work, delays, calls in the evenings. But that's normal for a new position, isn't it?" "Maybe," Maddie nodded, but her tone was skeptical. "What else? Little things that don't add up." He fell silent, remembering. Perfume. The phone she put away. Her ease with Ryan at the party. These were little things, but they accumulated like sand in a watch. There's something, he finally admitted, looking up. But I'm not sure what that means. Maybe I'm just stressing myself out. Maybe, Maddie shrugged. Or maybe not. Let's compare our puzzle pieces and decide whether we're cheating or not. Jake nodded, although part of him wanted to get up and leave. But he stayed, watching her open the gallery on her phone. Here, Maddie turned the screen towards him. The photo was a receipt from a restaurant La Bella Vita, an expensive Italian place in the center. The date is last Thursday. The time is 8 in the evening. This is a check from Ryan's wallet. He said he was at a business dinner. But look at the amount. Jake squinted as he read. 2 glasses of wine, 2 main courses, and dessert. $120 with tip. This doesn't look like a business dinner, he said, leaning back. Hurry up for a date. Exactly, Maddie nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. I asked him who he was with. He said he was with a client. But I know Ryan, he doesn't order dessert with clients. It's too personal. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Last Thursday, Ellie returned home after 9 and said she was late at work. He didn't ask for details, then he was tired. The children were already asleep. But now, this is all, he asked, trying to keep his voice even. No, Maddie scrolled further, showing a photo of a crumpled note. The handwriting was small but legible. Silver Pines, 7 p.m., don't be late. I found this in his jacket pocket yesterday. Silver Pines is a hotel 20 minutes from here. Hotel? Jake swallowed, feeling his throat go dry. You think? I think he's lying to me. Maddie looked into his eyes. And I think your Ellie may be part of this lie. He fell silent, looking at the note. His heart was beating faster, but he forced himself to breathe evenly. It could have been a coincidence. Ellie is not like that. But the perfume, the delays, Ryan. Are you sure? He asked quietly. This is a serious accusation. I'm not sure. Maddie shook her head. That's why I'm here. I have suspicions, but no evidence. What about you? Jake thought about it. He didn't want to talk, but her openness prompted him. Perfume, he said finally, looking out the window. I found the bottle in her bag. New. She doesn't wear them at home. And she is different, detached. But I thought it was work. Perfume, Maddie nodded, her gaze becoming sharper. Ryan also smells different sometimes. Not his cologne, something floral. They looked at each other, and at that moment the silence in the cafe became almost tangible. Jake felt something inside him crumble, not completely, but a crack appeared. What do you propose? He asked, clenching his hands into fists under the table. Join forces. Maddie leaned closer, her voice becoming quieter. I want to know the truth. And I think you too. We can follow them, check where they go, with whom. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. But if not, then what? Jake squinted, feeling his voice tremble. Then we will both know who we live with. She leaned back, looking at him. I don't want to be stupid, Jake. What about you? He was silent, looking at her phone. Receipt, note, perfume. They were pieces, but they added up to a picture that he was afraid to see. I'm not a detective, he said finally, rubbing his forehead. And I don't want to spy on my wife. Me too, Maddie nodded, but I don't want to guess anymore. Did you see how they behaved at the party? Jake nodded, remembering. Laughter, glances, light touch. He shrugged it off then, but now it looked different. Yes, he said quietly. There was something strange. That's what I mean. Maddie finished her coffee, putting the cup down with a light knock. I saw them together a couple of times. Accidentally. They're too close. Close, Jake repeated, feeling the word cut. And what do you want? Surveillance? For starters, she shrugged. I can check where Ryan goes. Where are you, Ellie? Let's compare notes. If we don't find anything, we'll forget. If we find. She fell silent, leaving the sentence hanging in the air. Jake looked at her, feeling doubt and determination fighting inside. "This is crazy," he said, shaking his head. "We don't know each other. Why should I believe you?" "They shouldn't," Maddie smiled, but there was something hard in her eyes. "But I'm not selling you anything, Jake. I just want the truth. And I think you too. Do you have children?" "Yes," he nodded, feeling a pang in his chest. "Two." "I don't," she looked away. "But I understand what it means. If I'm right, this is not just about you and me. This is about your family." Jake pursed his lips, looking at the table. Liv, Ethan, Ellie. He didn't want to think about the worst, but her words hurt. "Okay," he said finally, looking up. "I'm in. But if it's a dud, I'm leaving." "Fair enough," Maddie nodded, holding out her hand. "Union?" "Union," Jake shook her hand, feeling her palm getting colder. "Where do we start?" "I'll check on Ryan." She put the phone in her bag. "You're following Ellie. Write down when she leaves, when she comes back, what she says. We'll meet again in a couple of days." We agreed, he nodded, although everything inside was screaming against it. Maddie stood up, throwing a couple of dollars on the table for her coffee. "Good luck, Jake," she said, looking at him. And, "Hold on. This may not be easy." "Thank you," he nodded, remaining seated. "You too." She left, and the bell over the door rang again. Jake looked out the window, where her silhouette disappeared into the morning light. The cafe was buzzing around the noise of the coffee machine, voices, the clink of spoons. But inside him there was silence, heavy and cold. He took out his phone, opened his notes, and wrote, "Ellie, Thursday, returned at 9:15, said work." A rainy Tuesday evening found Jake in the car in the parking lot of the bright and stone office. The windshield wipers scraped lazily across the windshield, smearing the droplets, and outside the window, Chicago was drowning in a gray haze. The streetlights reflected in the puddles, casting trembling reflections on the asphalt, and the radio was playing quietly from the speakers some old Bob Dylan song that he barely listened to. Jake sat, clutching the steering wheel, looking at the glass doors of the building where Ellie worked. His heart was beating a little faster than usual, and there was a lump in his throat, a mixture of anxiety, anger, and some kind of morbid curiosity. After meeting Maddie on Saturday, he wrote down everything for 2 days. When Ellie left, when she returned, what she said. Yesterday, she returned at 8 and said that she was sorting out papers. This morning, I left earlier than usual, saying, "I'll be late, don't wait up." And here he was in the car with a phone in his hand, where a message from Maddie was glowing. "Ryan said he has a meeting downtown. Check on Ellie. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the same cafe." Jake exhaled, feeling the air tremble in his chest. He didn't want to do this. I didn't want to sit in the car, like some private detective from a cheap movie, spying on my wife, doubting her. But he also couldn't do anything. The office doors opened, and he tensed, peering through the veil of rain. Ellie walked out, her blonde hair shining under the lamp, and her dark blue skirt and coat making her silhouette both familiar and foreign at the same time. She opened her umbrella and walked toward the parking lot, and Jake held his breath. But instead of going to her car, a silver hatchback in the corner, she walked towards a black sedan parked closer to the entrance. The sedan door opened and Ryan Crawford stepped out. Jake felt the blood rush into his temples. Ryan is tall, wearing an expensive coat, with the same confident smile he wore at the party. He said something to Ellie. She laughed, closing her umbrella, and got into his car. The door slammed, the headlights flashed, and the sedan drove out of the parking lot, disappearing into the traffic. "Damn," Jake whispered, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His breathing became sharp, almost ragged. "This is not a job. These are not papers. This is something else." He started the engine, feeling his hands shake, and followed behind, keeping his distance. The rain drummed on the roof, drowning out the radio, and fragments of thoughts were spinning in my head. Maybe it's a business meeting. Maybe they're on their way to see a client. Maybe. But he knew he was lying to himself. Ellie's laughter, her ease with Ryan, it was too familiar, too similar to the way she had once looked at him. The sedan turned onto Lakeshore Drive and Jake followed, trying not to lose sight of it. The road was slippery, the lights of the city flashed outside the window, and something dark was growing inside him, not rage, but a cold, heavy mixture of pain and foreboding. He remembered Liv and Ethan, their laughter at breakfast, their "mother is beautiful" before the party. It was for their sake that he held on. For their sake, he must know. 20 minutes later, the sedan turned toward the Silver Pines Hotel. Jake slowed down and parked across the street. The hotel was small but stylish, glass windows, dark brick, a softly lit sign. He saw Ryan get out, walk around the car, and open the door for Ellie. She smiled, straightening her hair, and they walked inside together. Jake turned off the engine, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. His fingers tightened on the phone. He opened the camera and took several pictures: the sedan, the entrance, their backs. The rain flowed down the glass, blurring the picture, but he saw enough. This is not a meeting. This is not a job. This is betrayal. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes. The breathing was heavy, as if the air had become thick. There was a burning sensation in my chest, not tears, but something sharp, cutting. He wanted to rush in there, grab her hand, ask, "Why? How could you?" But he sat listening to the rain and tried to figure out what to do next. The phone vibrated and he jumped. Message from Maddie. "Where are you? Did you find anything?" Jake gritted his teeth, typing out the answer with trembling fingers. "Silver Pines. They're here. There's a photo." He sent the pictures, feeling his stomach tighten. It was not just a step, it was a leap into the abyss. The answer came a minute later. "Damn, I knew it. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Hang in there." Jake tossed his phone onto the passenger seat, looking out over the hotel. The light in the windows seemed distant, alien. He imagined Ellie there, inside, with Ryan, her laugh, her smile, her hands. Everything that was his was now given to someone else. "How could you?" he whispered, hitting the steering wheel with his fist. The impact was weak, but the sound echoed in the car. He didn't scream, didn't break anything. The anger was quiet, but deep, like a wound that you don't yet fully feel. Jake sat for a few more minutes, looking at the hotel. The rain was getting heavier, drumming on the roof, and memories were spinning in my head: their wedding, Liv's birth, their first home. All this now seemed fragile, like glass, ready to crack with one blow. He didn't know how much time had passed: 5 minutes, 10, but finally started the car and drove home. The walk back was slow, almost mechanical. He turned on the radio, but heard no words, only noise, drowning out his thoughts. When he entered the house, it was already past 9. Kate sat in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Hello, Mr. Miller." She raised her head. "You're early." "Yes," Jake nodded, throwing the keys on the shelf. His voice was hoarse, as if someone had squeezed all the strength out of him. "Are the children sleeping?" "Yes, I put them away half an hour ago." Kate stood up, collecting her things. "Everything is fine." "Okay," he forced himself to smile, but it came out crooked. "Thank you, Kate. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." She nodded and left. Jake went upstairs and looked into the children's rooms. Liv slept, hugging a stuffed unicorn, her curls scattered across the pillow. Ethan was curled up under the blanket with a plastic dinosaur lying next to him. He looked at them, feeling his chest tighten. It's for their sake. For their sake, he must control himself. In the bedroom, he lay down on the bed without undressing and stared at the ceiling. I tapped on the window, and images were spinning in my head: Ellie, Ryan, Silver Pines. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He just lay there, feeling like something was breaking inside. It was not the end, but the beginning of the end. And he knew that tomorrow, with Maddie, they would decide what to do next. The phone lay nearby. The screen glowed with an unread message from Ellie. "I'm late. Go to bed without me." He didn't answer. He simply closed his eyes, listening to the rain, and waited for the night to take his thoughts. Wednesday morning burst into Jake's life with a cold light breaking through the curtains. He sat in the Brew Haven Cafe, clutching a cup of black coffee as steam rose up his face, mixing with the smell of rain still hanging in the air from the night before. It was warm inside, but Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Yesterday's surveillance Ellie, Ryan, Silver Pines left a hole in him, and he stayed up most of the night, replaying those images in his head. The bell above the door jingled and Maddie Crawford entered the cafe. She spotted Jake, nodded, and walked over to his table, brushing the drops off her coat. "You look like a ghost," she said, sitting down opposite him. Her voice was hoarse, but with the usual hint of sarcasm. "I feel the same way." Jake took a sip of coffee, feeling the bitterness burn his throat. "Have you seen the photo?" "Yes." He nodded. "She came back at 11, he said quietly, looking out the window. "She said she was at work." She smiled as if nothing had happened. Maddie pursed her lips, her gaze hardening. "Ryan, too," she replied. "Came at midnight. He said that he met with his partners." Lies upon lies. Jake looked at her, feeling something break inside him. It was real. Not suspicions, not fantasies, reality, cold and sharp, like a knife. "So what now?" he asked, his voice trembling, but he kept himself under control. "We saw them. What's next?" Maddie leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with determination. "We need proof, Jake," she said. "Photos are a start, but this is not enough. You need something solid. Correspondence, calls, something that cannot be disputed." "Correspondence?" He frowned, putting the cup down. "You want me to go through her phone?" "Or on the laptop," Maddie shrugged. "I already tried with Ryan. He changed the password on his phone. And you?" Jake thought, feeling his heart beat faster. Ellie left her laptop at home. It was in the bedroom, on the nightstand, with their family photo on the screensaver. Password? He wasn't sure, but "Then you have a chance," Maddie nodded. "Check today. If there's nothing there, we'll try another way. But I'm sure there will be something." He was silent, looking at his hands. It was a step over the edge, an intrusion he wanted to avoid. But last night, Ellie entering the hotel with Ryan, her smile, her lies burned him from the inside. "Okay," he said finally, looking up. "I'll check." "Oh, agreed to meet tomorrow if anything is found." Maddie left, leaving him with cold coffee and a buzzing head. Jake looked out the window, feeling the rain behind the glass reflecting his thoughts. The house was quiet when he returned. Ellie went to work, the children were at school and kindergarten, and the nanny had not yet arrived. Jake threw the keys on the shelf, walked into the bedroom, and stopped in front of the nightstand. Ellie's laptop was lying there. He entered the password 0615, the date of their wedding, June 15th. The screen flickered and the desktop loaded. Jake let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. It worked. She didn't change it. He opened the browser, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. The history was clean, she deleted it. Jake pursed his lips but moved on to the mail. The login was saved, as was the password. She wasn't hiding, or I didn't think that he would check. The incoming emails were normal work newsletters, school reminders, advertisements. But in the sent folder, there is a letter sent yesterday at 6 in the evening, addressed to R. Crawford. Topic: Today. Jake clicked, and the text unfolded in front of him. "The Silver Pines room is booked as usual. 7 p.m. Don't be late. You know how much I don't like it. A." His breathing stopped. As usual. This is not the first time. Not an accident. He reread the line again, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. His hands trembled, and he clenched them into fists so as not to drop the laptop. This was the proof Maddie was talking about. Black on white, right in front of Yam. Jake closed his eyes, trying to breathe. Anger rose in a wave, but behind it came pain sharp, tearing, as if someone had pulled out a piece from his chest. He saw her yesterday, her smile, her stay at work, her tired look when she lay down next to him. Everything is a lie. All. He took a screenshot, sent it to Maddie with a quick, found it, and closed the laptop. The phone vibrated. Maddie replied, "Damn it. This is it. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring everything." Saturday morning was deceptively quiet at the Miller house. Jake stood at the living room window, watching his parents' car pull out of the driveway. Liv and Ethan sat in the back seat, their little faces aglow with joy. They had long been looking forward to a trip to their grandparents, dreaming of the park and pancakes with maple syrup. He helped them get ready an hour ago, checked their backpacks, a change of clothes, toys, books, and kissed them goodbye, trying to keep his voice even. "Have a good time, sunshines," he said, feeling his stomach tighten. They left, and now the house was empty, ready for what was to come. Jake turned, looking at Ellie. She was sitting on the sofa, cross-legged, with a cup of tea in her hands. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her t-shirt and shorts made her look like the Ellie he knew years ago. But now he saw her differently, not as a wife, but as a stranger whose secrets he kept in his phone pocket. A screenshot of the letter, a photo at Silver Pines, Maddie's post about La Bella Vita. This was his arsenal, collected over a week of surveillance and doubt. Today he will find out the truth. Today it will all end. He walked to the sofa, sat down opposite her in the chair, and put the phone on the coffee table. Ellie looked up. Her eyes were calm, but there was a hint of curiosity in them. "You're kind of serious," she said, sipping her tea. "Did something happen?" "We need to talk," Jake said quietly but firmly, looking into her eyes. His voice trembled on the inside, but remained calm on the outside. "About what?" Ellie frowned, putting the cup on the table. Her tone became colder, as if she felt threatened. "About you." He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "About us. About what's happening." She fell silent, looking at him. The silence in the room became heavy, almost ringing. A car drove by outside the window. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, but inside there was only their breathing. "Nothing's happening, Jake," she said finally, her voice even, but there was a hint of tension in it. "You are again looking for problems where there are none." He shook his head, feeling the anger rising in waves, but he held it in, keeping it inside. "Don't, Ellie," he said, taking out his phone. "I know everything." Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms, looking at him defiantly. "What do you know?" she asked, her voice becoming harsher. "Are you having your fantasies again?" Jake opened the gallery, selected a screenshot of the letter, and turned the screen towards her. "The Silver Pines room is booked as usual, 7 p.m. Don't be late. You know how much I don't like it. A." He placed the phone on the table, between them, like a grenade. "These are your words," he said, looking into her eyes. "Sent to Ryan Crawford. I saw you there on Tuesday. You went with him instead of working late." Ellie froze, her face turned pale, but she quickly pulled herself together. Her gaze darted to the screen, then back to it. "Were you spying on me?" Her voice rose to a higher tone, anger flashed in it. "Have you checked my laptop? Is this what will happen now?" "I wanted the truth." Jake clenched his fists, but kept his voice level. "You lied to me. For weeks. As usual, Ellie. This is not the first time. How long does it take?" She turned away, her fingers tightening on the sleeve of her t-shirt. Silence hung again, but now it was different, tense, like a stretched string. "It's not what you think," she finally said, looking at the floor. "It's nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" He smiled bitterly, feeling the pain cutting through his chest. "You go to the hotel with him, write to him, lie to my face, and this is nothing serious." Ellie looked up, her eyes sparkling, but there were no tears. "I didn't mean to," she said quietly, her voice trembling. I I don't know how this happened, Jake. It was just like that. Just like that." He leaned closer, his voice became harsher. "You destroyed everything we had, just like that. Liv, Ethan, is our house all just for fun to you?" She shuddered, her lips trembled, and she covered her face with her hands. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't mean to hurt you. I I don't understand why." "Then explain." Jake looked at her, feeling anger mixed with despair. "Why, Ellie? What did I do wrong? What were you missing?" She shook her head, her hands fell to her knees, and she looked at him. The look was empty, lost. "This is not about you," she said, her voice weak. I don't know. I'm confused, Jake, but I didn't want this." "You're confused," he repeated, feeling the words cut. And I thought we were a team, that we are together, and you went to him. Ellie sobbed, but there were still no tears. She looked at him, her face distorted with pain. "Forgive me," she whispered, holding out her hand. "Please, Jake. I know I'm to blame, but I don't want to lose you. We can fix this." He pulled away, looking at her hand as if it were something else. His heart screamed to forgive, to forget, to return everything back. But the mind was cold as steel. To correct, he shook his head, his voice becoming firm. "You betrayed me, Ellie. What to fix? You betrayed the children. I can't just forget it." "Please," her voice broke. She stood up, stepping towards him. "I'll do anything. I will quit. I will stop communicating with him. Just don't leave." Jake stood up, stepping back. His hands were shaking, but he controlled himself. "I can't trust you," he said quietly, looking into her eyes. "You lied to my face. Every day, I saw you with him. This is not a mistake. It's a choice." She began to sob, covering her face with her hands, but he did not come. Pain tore him from the inside, but he knew there was no turning back. "This is all?" she asked through tears, lowering her hands. "Are you going to leave me like this?" "You did it yourself." He turned, took the phone, and headed towards the kitchen. "We're finished, Ellie." Jake stood at the kitchen table, looking at the envelope with documents that the lawyer brought in the morning. Divorce. The word sounded like a gunshot, but he knew it was inevitable. Ellie came in next. Her steps were uncertain, her face red from tears. "What is this?" she asked, her voice shaking when she saw the envelope. "Documents." Jake nodded at them. His tone was cold, businesslike. "Divorce." She took a step back, her eyes widening in horror. Are you serious?" she whispered. "We can't end it like this, Jake. We have children. That's why I'm doing this." He turned to her, his gaze firm. "So that they don't live in a lie. I offer terms." "Conditions?" She swallowed, looking at him. "Joint custody," he began, crossing his arms. "The children stay with you in the house, so as not to harm them even more. I pay child support only for them. You are an adult. Earn it yourself. And no scenes in front of Liv and Ethan. We part peacefully." Ellie looked at him, her chest heaving with heavy breathing. "I'll sue. I'll make sure you don't see them. Don't divorce me." Jake grinned, but there was no joy in it, only cold determination. "The court will give me custody, Ellie," he said, lowering his voice. "Joint, at least. I am a good father. I have a stable job and income. And you? Do you think the court won't be interested in your trips to Silver Pines?" She turned pale, her hands trembled. Are you threatening me?" she whispered. "I'm giving you a chance." He stepped closer, looking into her eyes. "Sign this, and we'll leave quietly. But if you start a war, I will tell you everything. Your company will be happy to hear about office romances. Reputation, Ellie. Are you ready to lose her?" She trembled, her gaze darting from him to the envelope. Silence hung again, but now it was different, defeated. "You're blackmailing me," she breathed, her voice weak. "I'm protecting myself." He shook his head. "And children. You ruined it, not me." Ellie looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue. She slowly took the envelope, opened it, and pulled out the papers. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages, and then she took the pen from the table. "I don't want this," she whispered, looking at him. "But you leave me no choice." "You made a choice earlier," he said, his voice cold, but still burning inside. She signed, her hand trembling, the ink leaving jagged lines. Ellie placed the papers in front of him and stood up, her shoulders slumping. "I hope you'll be happy," she said quietly, her voice empty. "I'm already free," he answered, taking the documents. "That's all I need to do." She went into the bedroom, slamming the door, and Jake remained standing, looking at the signature. Jake met Monday morning in his new apartment, standing at the window overlooking a quiet street in the suburbs of Chicago. The sun filtered through the thin curtains, casting soft streaks of light onto the wooden floor. The apartment was small, one bedroom, a living room with a kitchenette, a bathroom with a slightly creaking door, but it was his. He signed the lease last week after Ellie signed the divorce papers and moved his things here. A couple of suitcases of clothes, a box of books, a coffee maker. Jake walked to the kitchen table, where there was an open box of dishes. He took out his favorite mug, the one with the inscription Best Dad, and put it on the shelf next to the coffee maker. Yesterday, he spent the day sorting things out and putting them in their places. He made the bed in the bedroom with a dark blue blanket and put a photo of Liv and Ethan on the nightstand, their laughing faces on the carousel in the park. In the living room, there was an old sofa, which he took from home, and a small TV. Nothing extra, but enough to make this place a home. He turned on the coffee maker, listening to it hum, filling the air with a familiar aroma. Birds were chirping outside the window, and the neighbor upstairs walked on the floor, cracking the boards. It was not their big house with a lawn and children's laughter, but it was quiet and peaceful here. Jake took the hot mug, sat down on the sofa, and took a sip, looking at the empty wall opposite. He needed to hang something, a picture, maybe a shelf. But for now, he was just drinking coffee, feeling the warmth spreading through his chest. The phone vibrated on the table, and he picked it up. Message from Maddie. How is the new apartment? Are you bored alone? Jake smiled at the corner of his lips, typing the answer. Quiet, but okay. Coffee helps. How are you? They started texting more often after that week of surveillance and evidence, and he found himself waiting for her messages. Alive, she answered after a minute. Ryan moved out yesterday. Do you want coffee in the park? The weather is good. Jake looked out the window. The sky was clear. The sun was warm. Why not? Come on in an hour, he wrote. By the pond? Agreed, came the answer, and he felt a slight lift. Maddie became his ally in the chaos, and her presence sarcastic, but warm, helped keep his head above water. He finished his coffee, put on jeans and a gray sweatshirt, grabbed his keys, and walked out. The road to the park took 15 minutes on foot past neat houses, through an intersection with a noisy traffic light, along a path with maple trees, whose leaves were already beginning to turn yellow. He saw Maddie by the pond, sitting on a bench holding 2 paper cups, her dark hair blowing in the wind. Hello, new guy, she said, handing him coffee as he sat down next to her. Her voice was slightly mocking, but her eyes were warm. Hi, Jake took the glass, feeling the warmth through the cardboard. Thank you. How are you? Better than a week ago, Maddie shrugged, taking a sip of her coffee. Ryan took his things, and the house now seems empty. But it's for the better. I understand, he nodded, looking at the pond where the ducks swam lazily in circles. It's quiet for me too. Too quiet sometimes. You'll get used to it, she looked at him. Or get a dog. They make noise. Maybe, he grinned, but a thought flashed through his mind. Liv would be delighted to have a puppy. And you? I? Maddie chuckled. I'm too lazy for dogs. But coffee helps. And walks. They fell silent, looking at the water. The wind rustled the leaves, and somewhere in the distance children were screaming as they rode their bicycles. Jake felt her presence calming him, not completely, but enough to help him breathe easier. You're doing well, she said suddenly, looking at him. With the children, with everything. If I were you, I would have already broken down. I can't cope, he shook his head, his voice becoming quieter. I'm just holding on. For their sake. This is how to cope, Maddie smiled, her tone becoming softer. You and I are a team of survivors, you know. Yes, he nodded, feeling how warm her words were. Team of survivors. They finished their coffee, threw the cups into the trash can, and walked along the pond, chatting about little things about her work in marketing, about his reports, about how she once spilled coffee on her boss. It was easy, almost like before with Ellie, but without pain. Jake found himself smiling more than he had in weeks. Jake knew that today he would have to talk to the children. He arranged for Ellie to meet at the house, their former home, to explain the divorce to Liv and Ethan. He arrived at noon, parking his car at a familiar porch. His heart beat faster as he walked towards the door, but he controlled himself. It was for their sake. Ellie opened the door. Her face was pale, her eyes slightly red. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, and looked tired. "Hello," she said quietly, stepping aside. "They are in the living room." "Hi," Jake nodded as he entered. His voice was even, but everything inside was tense. "Are you ready?" "Yes," she swallowed, closing the door. "Let's do this quickly." They walked into the living room, where Liv and Ethan were sitting on the couch, playing with blocks. Liv was building a tower, and Ethan was chasing a dinosaur around it. When they saw Jake, they jumped up, rushing towards him. "Dad!" Liv hugged him, her curls tickling his chin. "You have come, Dad." Ethan grabbed his leg, beaming. "We are building a castle." "I see," Jake smiled, hugging them both. His heart sank from their warmth, but he knew that now it would be hard. "Well done. Sit down. Mom and I need to talk to you." They obediently returned to the sofa, looking at him with curiosity. Ellie sat down next to her hands clenched nervously in her lap. Jake sank into the chair opposite him, feeling his throat go dry. "Dear ones," he began, trying to keep his voice soft. "Mom and I made an important decision. We won't live together anymore." Liv frowned, her brown eyes narrowing. "Why?" she asked, her voice clear but wary. "Sometimes parents do that," Ellie chimed in, her voice trembling. "This doesn't mean we love you any less. It's better this way. Are you quarreling?" Ethan looked at them, squeezing the dinosaur in his hands. "No," Jake shook his head, although that wasn't entirely true. "We just decided that we would live separately. But we are still your family." Liv nodded, looking thoughtfully at the cubes. "So we will have two houses?" she asked. Her tone was calm, but there was a flash of anxiety in her eyes. "Yes, honey," Jake smiled, trying to calm her down. "You will live with your mother here, and I will be nearby in my apartment. I will always be with you whenever you want. Can I come to you?" Ethan raised his head, his blue eyes sparkling. "Of course," Jake nodded, feeling the warmth spreading in his chest. "Whenever. I have a sofa, a TV, and we can make pizza." "Hooray!" Ethan jumped, his anxiety dissolving into a smile. Ellie looked at them, her lips trembled, but she held on. "You are still our babies," she said, her voice weak, "and we will always love you." "We know," Liv shrugged, her tone almost adult. "My friend Maddie had the same thing. The main thing is that you don't quarrel." Jake nodded, feeling a pang in his heart at her words. They shouldn't see dirt. This was his promise. "We won't," he said, looking at Ellie. She nodded in confirmation. Ethan got off the couch, ran over to Jake, and hugged him. "Will you come tomorrow?" he asked, looking up. "I'll come." Jake patted him on the head. "I promise." Liv came up behind him, hugged him silently, and he felt her small hands squeezing him more tightly than usual. They knew more than they said, but they accepted it in their own way calmly, with childish faith that everything would be fine. Ellie stood up, her gaze was hard, but she didn't argue. "Thank you," she said quietly as the children ran off to play, for doing it softly. "For their sake," Jake nodded, standing up. "I'll go. See you tomorrow." 6 years later. The summer afternoon in suburban Chicago was warm and clear, with a light breeze rustling the leaves of the old maple tree in Ellie's backyard. The air was filled with a smell of freshly cut grass, smoke from the grill, and the sweet aroma of vanilla cake that sat on the table under the awning. Today was Liv's 13th birthday, and the yard had turned into a party scene. Colorful balloons hung from the branches, garlands stretched from the fence to the veranda, and pop music came from the speakers, something energetic that Liv had chosen herself. Children ran across the lawn, laughed, chased each other with water pistols, and adults stood in groups, holding lemonade or beer. Jake arrived half an hour ago, parking his pickup truck on a familiar porch. 6 years have passed since he left this house, leaving it to Ellie and the children after the divorce. Now he lived 10 minutes away in a cozy house with a small garden, which he shared with Maddie and their dog, a Labrador named Buddy. Life had changed, but this yard still evoked echoes of the past, the laughter of Liv and Ethan, the smell of barbecue, the warm evenings that they once shared. He stood at the refreshments table, holding a bottle of beer, and watched Liv, tall and curly, rush around with her friends, her voice ringing above the noise. "Dad!" Liv noticed him, ran up and hugged him, almost spilling his beer. Her brown eyes sparkled, and there was a blush on her cheeks. "Have you seen my cake? There are 13 candles." "I saw it," Jake smiled, hugging her back. "You're officially a teenager now. How does it feel?" "Cool." She jumped. Her curls flew up. "Mom said that I can take the guitar next year if I study well." "Smart deal," he winked. "But you are already a star. Where is Ethan?" "There, with friends." Liv waved her hand towards the lawn, where 11-year-old Ethan, already older than his age, was kicking a ball with the boys. "He wants you to play football with them." "Tell him I'm too old for this," Jake laughed, patting her on the head. "But I'll look. Go have fun." Liv ran away, her laughter dissolving into the hubbub of the celebration, and Jake took a sip of beer, feeling the warmth in his chest. The children grew up, but remained his light. 6 years ago, he was afraid that divorce would break them, but they managed. Liv became artistic, independent, Ethan cheerful and stubborn, as always. He was there, as promised, and that kept him afloat. A man stood at the grill tall, with short brown hair and light stubble, wearing a plaid shirt. It was Paul, Ellie's partner for the last 3 years. Jake had seen him before at school events, at birthday parties. Paul was a history teacher, calm, with a gentle sense of humor, and apparently good with children. Jake nodded at him as their eyes met, and Paul raised his hand in response, smiling. No animosity, just politeness between two people living their own lives. Ellie emerged from the house carrying a tray of cupcakes. Her blonde hair was shorter than before, down to her shoulders, and in jeans and a blue blouse, she looked younger than 42. She noticed Jake, her face tensed for a second, but then softened. Placing the tray on the table, she walked up to him, holding a glass of lemonade in her hands. "Hello," she said quietly, stopping a couple of steps away. Her voice was soft, but with a slight tremble. "Glad you came." "Hi," Jake nodded, looking at her. "I couldn't miss 13 Liv." "Yes," Ellie smiled, but her gaze was thoughtful. "She is growing so fast. Sometimes I can't keep up with her." "That's for sure." He took a sip of beer, feeling slightly awkward. They didn't talk one-on-one often, usually through their children or short messages. But today there was something in her tone that made him wary. "Can I see you for a minute?" Ellie nodded towards the veranda, away from the guests. "Just talk." Jake narrowed his eyes, but nodded. "Of course," he said, following her. They went up to the veranda, where it was quieter, only the rustling of leaves and the distant laughter of children. Ellie leaned against the railing, looking out over the yard, her fingers nervously clutching her glass. Jake stood nearby, feeling how old emotions, pain, anger, fatigue were stirring somewhere deep, but did not come out. "I wanted to say thank you," she began, without looking at him. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Over the years, because you didn't tell the children everything, and he didn't throw mud at me." Jake fell silent, looking at her. 6 years ago, he could have even wanted to shout, accuse, and smear her in front of everyone. But he restrained himself. "For Liv and Ethan. For your own sake." "It wasn't for you," he said finally, his voice level but firm. "This is for them. No matter what, you are their mother." Ellie nodded, her eyes sparkling, but she held back her tears. "I know," she whispered, "and I know that I deserve the worst. I I still don't understand why I did that, Jake. It was stupid, selfish, and I regret every day." He looked at her, feeling the old wounds ache, but no longer bleeding. 6 years ago, her words, "I'm sorry, I'm confused," cut him like a knife. Now they sounded different, not an excuse, but a recognition. "You already said that," he said, looking at the yard. "Then, on that day, I heard." "Yes," she swallowed, turning to him. "But I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. And thank you for not letting it ruin them. You could have, but you didn't." Jake nodded, feeling something inside him release, not completely, but enough. "I didn't want them to see you like that," he said quietly. "They love you. And I didn't want to be the one to break it. Ellie looked at him, her lips twitching into a faint smile. You were always better than me, she said, her voice hoarse. I didn't deserve this. Maybe not, he shrugged, looking at her. But this is not about merit. This is about them. She nodded, her gaze falling on Paul, who was laughing with someone at the grill. The floor is good, she said quietly. I'm trying to be better to him. Okay, Jake nodded, feeling slightly relieved. Appreciate him, Ellie, and don't make the same mistakes. This is very painful. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. I know, she whispered. I won't forget what you went through because of me. And I promise it won't happen again. He nodded, feeling the last threads of the past being torn. It wasn't forgiveness in the full sense he couldn't forget, couldn't erase that night at Silver Pines. But it was acceptance. She lived her life, he lived his. And the children tied them up, but no longer held them in the past. Okay, he said, moving away from the railing. I'll go to Liv. This is her day. Yes, Ellie smiled, wiping the corner of her eye. Thank you, Jake. He nodded and went down to the courtyard, where Liv was already handing out pieces of cake to her friends. Maddie appeared next to him, her dark hair glistening in the sun, and a glass of lemonade in her hands. Everything is fine, she asked, looking at him. Her voice was soft, but with the usual hint of mockery. Yes, Jake nodded, taking her hand. I just closed an old chapter. Okay, Maddie squeezed his fingers, smiling. Then let's celebrate the new one. They walked over to the table where Liv was cutting the cake, her laughter ringing across the courtyard. Ethan ran over, his face sticky with cream, and poked Jake in the side. Pap, cow, will you play football with me? He asked, beaming. Only if Maddie does too, Jake winked at her. Oh, I passed, Maddie laughed, raising her hands. But I will cheer for you. Okay, Ethan grabbed the ball and ran to the lawn. Let's go, Dad. Jake followed him, feeling the sun warm his back and the laughter of children filled the air. Ellie remained at the table, looking at her and Paul, her smile quiet, grateful. 6 years ago, he didn't think he could stand here, laugh, move on with his life. But here he is with Maddie, with children, with a new life. The past was behind him, and he was free. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.